Hello everybody, welcome back to Throttle Grotto. Today we're going to do a quick teardown on the 928 engine and see what actually failed. This thing's got to come apart anyway because at some point I'm turning it into a coffee table. Not for my house, for some ultra wealthy person's house. Unfortunately, I think this thing threw metal shards all the way through the engine. So while this thing looks spiffy and clean outside, inside is a sparkling mess of German engineering, or failed German engineering in this instance. First of all, I have not completely drained the pan of power steering fluid because I am lazy, but I will wipe this out and try to get as much of the crap out of it as I can so we can see how much stuff is in the oil as it comes out of the engine. Now keep in mind, this engine has only run about 30 minutes total since I removed it from, or correction, since I changed the oil. So I have the old oil filter up there, the one that was in it the first time I changed it. This one has about 30 minutes on it. So let's see how much of a mess I can make here on the floor of the garage, because it just seems like what I do is make a mess and occasionally put on oil filters too tight. There we go. That's about $80 worth of oil, almost $100 oil change. I hate wasting money like that. Really sucks. So we'll put this here on this freshly cleaned pan to let it drain, and then this will drain all over everything while I take out the drain plug. And if I'm smart about it, I'll try not to drain the oil, or take the drain plug out completely, because I don't know that this little pan here will hold all 8 quarts of fluid. You know, when you get a YouTuber that puts a drain plug in, how do you trust him? So, looking at what's coming out, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lot of material. You can see in that oil, there we go, you can see all of the oil stuff in suspension in the oil. So that's not good. That's actually really bad. And looking in the pan here, it looks like I'm prospecting for silver just all over. And I wiped this out before I started, so I know it wasn't like left over from me grinding on something. All right, so I'm going to pull some things off of here, which some of them have value and some of them don't. But there actually are some valuable pieces still left on this engine that I won't be using. The valve, or the cam covers, are definitely valuable. Unbroken cam covers are probably a hard thing to find for a 928. So I will be able to sell those and recover some life force. All of these other plastic covers I can just sell as a set. Saving bolts for other projects is also a noble thing to do. 27mm for the crank bolt. That part won't be used for the swap. And there is a lot of like contamination around the belt area. I had the oil. If you haven't been tracking the amount of fun that I've had with this engine, trying to find my screwdriver, which I took out and set somewhere and then lost just as quickly as I took it out of the toolbox. So I had a timing belt fail because the oil pump drive gear failed. So it shredded the belt. And it looks like on this, the second belt in this engine, something has been rubbing on it. So I'm definitely curious to see what that was all about, because that's... I'll set that up there for the moment. And of course it's trapped by this flange for the oil drain back to the pan. Yeah, you can see all the crap from whatever was rubbing on the belt inside the cover. So that really qualifies me as an expert level mechanic here. You guys should be proud to know me. All right, unfortunately, really the only thing I see that could be the cause of that groove in the timing belt is probably this cover broke loose down here and probably was rubbing on the belt. Like, I don't feel anything else that would have interfered with the belt. Just nothing else is making contact with it except this little plastic guide or guard that is held on by circlips down here. Good old circlips. Love that guy. Yeah, so I'm going to pull the Porkin tensioner off, which is basically a 1.8T, like an Audi timing belt tensioner. It worked. I mean, the timing belt didn't slip. It's got good deflection on it. Just the engine itself. And then once we have that out of the way, I can pull that tensioner bracket off that goes with it. Maybe that's part of it now, just forever. But as you can see, this is a ridiculously long timing belt, which the 928 is known for. And putting this on in the car is definitely an exercise in patience that also required several clamps to hold the belt onto the gears as I was undoing everything. Here's the oil pump gear that decided that it wanted to no longer play nice with others earlier in my life. Not a very long time ago, unfortunately. So, just gonna leave that attached for now so that I don't lose things into the oil pan as easily. I'm not going to pull the water pump out yet because I feel like making a terrible mess later in life. There's no lower drains for coolant on the engine that I'm aware of. So everything on here is literally full to the bottom of the heads. So we pull the heads off and there's area around the cylinder heads, like open space for coolant to cool up and surround the pistons, which I presume makes for a cooler running engine. But in this case, nothing cool about this engine anymore. It is toast. So these wee plugs come out on here, and hopefully, nope, they are going to be difficult because it says Porsche on it. There we go. So I'll have to break all these loose by hand. Well, all right, we can persuade you other ways. Okay, now I can dugga these out. And all these are is just some plugs with washers on them that I will need to keep for later. These are basically the covers for the cam towers. So those make it look all pretty up top. And then below, there's just Allen heads all the way down that hold this cam tower on. And hopefully those come out easy. The ones up top just mirror the ones on the bottom, but you have to use a long Allen head and get in there like that. And then you can break these loose. Those seem loose. And I think it was this cylinder back here was the one that was making all the noises. But we'll see if I'm right. If you ever played Operation as a kid, this is your time to shine. Well, if you ever successfully played Operation as a kid, this is your time to shine. There's just enough room to get that bolt and washer out of there. And then if you do that, like I just did, you have to kind of like re-jab it onto the Allen wrench and completely into the head like that. Good stuff. Now that I've got all those out, this should come loose. Hopefully I get it off of here without destroying everything in its path. Pull the distributor off of here so I don't drop that and break a good distributor. And then hopefully try not to make it two that I have to retrieve. There we go. Okay. So now you can see these little fussy gaskets that go around the valve train have clearly not allowed themselves to be a reusable gasket, which is okay. That's fine. Not too worried, because if I put this back together, I doubt we're going to use gaskets. So there you are. There's your valve train, and you could come in here and do whatever you wanted. So my guess is that it was related to the cams here in the back of the engine. And here we have our lifters. And I think, yep, there we go. So we can pull those out and look at them one-on-one. And that one, looks pretty good. That looks almost brand new. Yeah, no wear on that. That's clean. A little bit of, well, it's hard to see with the dirty towel, but there's a little bit of, you can see a little bit where it's like been pushing on that part in the center of it. Look down into the bores here, or into the lifter housings too. I get my flashlight. So if we look down in there, the cams look nice, or at least this one does. Definitely wasn't there. Just work our way down the line here. There should be one of these from the noises that it was making that's obvious. So you can see the oil on there, but not any damage to these cams, or this section either. Yeah, no, I don't see nothing there that would be alarming. Yeah, I don't see anything there. Nothing there. And certainly nothing there. So no witness marks anywhere in the valve train, which is exactly where I would have thought that to be. That would have been, I was absolutely sure that was where the noise was coming from. So that means that it's either on that side of the engine, which I really don't think it is, or it's in the bottom end. The real question would be, do I really want to pull the bottom end apart? Well, I'll have to take the bottom end apart to pull the cam, or the crank out, because the coffee tables don't get crankshafts. Crankshafts are for winners, not coffee tables. So far, the teardown on this has not yielded me anything that would cause me concern. You turn the cam, pushes the lifters up and down. I could have had like a plugged up lifter, but there was no damage to the lifter to show that it wasn't pumping up. Like it would have, there would have been damage to as much noise as it was making. There would have been damage to the tops of the lifters. And then there would have been witness marks. I guess the next step is I'm going to flip this thing around and I will pull the other cam tower off and we'll get a look at that. The next step, I got the other head off and we're going to look at these lifters and see nothing there. They're all coming out of the bores nicely. There's no damage to them. Again, I was expecting to see one of these that had real problem between the cam and the lifter. Something that would give me indication that they were not jiving together, but I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing anything, which is a little frustrating because there was definitely a noise, which means it's not on this last lifter, and it was definitely in the bottom end of the engine, and it definitely looks like it's in the bottom end of the engine. That is stage one of the table teardown, and unfortunately, I'm no closer to an answer as to what happened. All right, and if we look one more time at the pan, you can see all the shiny bits in there. So I'm definitely not crazy. There is something going on with this engine. It's just not going on where I thought it was. So more teardown to come. So today's job is literally going to be stripping this cam tower down, getting at least one of the cylinder heads off, making an enormous mess in the shop because the block is still filled with coolant because you can't drain it. But I am hoping that this goes fairly simply and straightforward. Just going to pull this end plate off. Hopefully save the little gasket on the end. I want to reuse that, not because it's going to seal effectively, but because it's just going to be able to be reused. I don't have to buy one to put on there to make it look correct. And then on this end, I have this whole distributor drive assembly. So I need to undo there's three 10mm bolts inside of that. And then I need to pull these out of the ends of the head, or out of the head itself. There we go. I think we got it loose. Not loose. There we go. Sort of loose. So now it's all being trapped by these. There's that. There we go. That makes a lot more sense. I've got the cam gear and the distributor drive assembly off and out of the way. What do we got going on here? No, maybe I did that when I ran the impact on it. Well, so sorry, 928 engine. Okay, so I've got this old slide hammer thing, and actually works really well with dual jaws for pulling these lifter sleeves out. Just takes a few knocks to get them to come out. They're not really in here. That So now, with those out of the way, we can apparently I lied about getting the cam out. So the bolt that I dropped in here is the reason that it's not coming out. Just hanging up on that. Now, there. I'd forgotten that I'd dropped that into the housing before. I have an empty but oily cam housing. I'm going to let that drain for a day or two. And now we can move on to the heads. All right, one thing we can do while we're going through this process is we can pull the plugs and see how well this engine was running. And of course, we're going to save the plugs because we'll probably need plugs to put back in it to make it look correct. It's not bad, not terrible. Let's check the rest of them. So far, so good. We've got a little bit of white. Same with this one. So this is the passenger side of the engine right now. So far, they all look pretty decent. Yep, they're all coming out about nothing that I would see a significant problem. Yeah, I mean, overall, if you look at the plugs, it's a pretty healthy engine. Even more frustrating that this thing let go and that I have to do all this. This is going to make a great coffee table. After a significant amount of mess, this here bolt on the driver's side is the one that will drain the block of coolant. So today I learned. I figured there was something, but I was not prepared for the amount of overflow that I had coming out of that. Now that I am a bit more prepared, good grief. What a mess. I hate cleaning up coolant. So there was almost a gallon and a half of coolant left in the block. So you'll see why here in a minute, if you haven't had one of these engines apart, that getting that out of the block makes your life so much easier when you're taking the rest of this apart. Next step to get the heads off is I need to get the water bridge out of the way, because that connects both the cylinder heads together, and without pulling that off, it's not likely that I'd be able to get these out. That's 2 Allens on either side, so it's not terribly difficult. Fortunately, these are all coming out easily because they really haven't been on here that long. And I've already gone through the headache of having 1 or 2 of these that were broken. If you remember from the assembly video where I put this engine together. One more right here that I can't seem to grab the right wrench to do. There we go. This should come off with a couple of wraps. And of course I was foiled by the oil filler. I think, if I remember correctly, one of the bolts is inside here. Yep. Right down in the very bottom of this is the other one that attaches that. And then we'll just set that right in the right in there. And then this can come off. All right, so now you can see down into the crankcase where the oil filler went. And then this is the crossover port for the water. And you can see it's actually mirrored on the back of the head. They used the same head, they just flipped it around. So the water crossover tube goes here and then seals to the back side of the water pump with a O-ring. Now we're in a position where the heads are going to come off super easy, and I won't make an enormous mess in the garage. Okay, so this part of it should be pretty easy. We've just got our head bolts that are here, and they're attached to studs that go into the block. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you have to take the cam towers off to get this part of the engine undone. And there's the nuts and then a washer. If I was taking this apart to make something other than a piece of furniture, that just dropped down into who knows where. Oh, I think this is going to get messy. Oh, we're dripping. We're dripping. Can't believe we're still dripping coolant, but you'll see why here in a minute. Come on, cylinder head. There we go. Okay. I'm going to try to save these guys here too, so that I can use them. Put back under the heads, and we put this all back together. There we go. So this is why we're probably still dripping a bunch of coolant, because the cylinders are all surrounded by coolant. This is basically, once the engine is full of coolant, this is actually full of fluid surrounding each one of the pistons and the liners. So unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, or whatever, the cylinder walls in this engine are still really good. They're still in like really nice, clean shape. Everything like turns nice and smooth. Aside from the noise that it made, there's no reason for it to really be a bad engine. All right, now that the heads are off, it'll be a pretty easy task to actually just pull all of the valve train out of the heads and take that stuff out, because like this is going to be a coffee table. We don't need pistons in the cylinders. We don't need valve train. So we're going to take the valve train out of the heads and just recycle that stuff. And then we'll tear the block down and get the pistons out and see which one of these slimy little jerks is the cause of the problem. I'm going to do a big cleanup here in the garage and organize some stuff relating to this. All right, I decided to re-record this because I felt pretty dumb doing this, but I made a little valve spring remover tool, and it just kind of bolts to the head. And I use the existing holes and a couple of pieces of scrap metal that I drilled some holes in. And it actually works pretty good now that I've, done 6 valves and kind of figured things out a little bit, how I'm supposed to be doing this. So I've never taken valves out of an engine before. One of the nice things is that all the holes are basically symmetrical all the way down, which is nice. That makes it pretty easy to deal with. So what I've got going on here is, there's my fulcrum or my prying piece, and then I just put this over the top, run this bolt down to hold the pry bar in place. And then that compresses the valve enough that I can tip this over here, and then I just tap on the valve a little bit, and that unseats. You can see here some of the keepers are ridged, so they're kind of a pain to get out. You have to compress everything far enough that it allows it all to escape. So now I take this out again. Flip that out of the way, and I slip my wrench, basically a spacer, in there, and then get that set up where I want it, and then I run this back down again to hold it in place. Like that. And then I can come up underneath here, tap that valve back up far enough to where I can pop the valve retainer off ×2, pick them up with a magnet, and then I can release the valve. There's that. That. The spring comes off. And then you can just push the valve out the bottom. Like that. I have this one to finish up, and then a whole another head to do, but then the head will be, both the cylinder heads will be completely stripped down. And the reason I'm taking the valves out is because of weight. These engines weigh in at like 600 pounds, even though they're all aluminum. And that's a lot for a coffee table. I don't know that anybody wants a 600-pound coffee table in their living room. I mean, I don't know anybody that wants a 928 coffee table, because if I did, they'd be banging down my door to get this one. Okay, so we have the head all stripped down now, and you can see I've got the valves all laid out. And if we look at the cylinder heads here, we can see that the exhaust valves, the smaller ones, that have I guess the heat marks or whatever on the back of them. And then the intakes are the larger ones, have all the carbon deposits on them. But like, this was a running engine. I still don't know why it stopped being a running engine. Well, it was still running, but it was knocking. All these pieces are not going back into the engine. The heads are going to go on. If I can pop these valve guides off of here, I might pop those out too. Looks like I could probably just tap them out with something from the back side here. The heads are basically ready to get cleaned up. I haven't figured out which way I'm going to get these cleaned yet. I might be having this stuff dry ice blasted, but we're not quite sure yet. So those are ready to go, which leaves this hulking beast to finish tearing down. So I need to get this in a position where it's not going to make the most amount of mess. Started this thing off of the cart, and we have basically most of the oil pan bolts already removed. I did leave a couple in place so that I wouldn't have the oil pan accidentally fall off, but I think I have it pretty well adhered to the block with some adhesive. So I'm hoping. There's the mess I was waiting for. There we go. I'm going to pull the oil pump off of here, or not the oil pump, sorry, pickup tube. Throw that in the oil pan, because these oil pans are actually sought after by some people that work on the later engines, because they have a deep sump and a baffle and all that stuff in them. So, and I need that part to go with it. Not the most ideal way to take apart an engine, but here we are. This is the front. Up here, that's the back. I'm expecting that the noise was coming from the back, and I don't, well, there's a little bit of play on that one. So a few things I'm seeing right there. I'm seeing a little bit of, see that witness mark there on the side of the crank? That seems suspicious. Turns over fine by hand. It's not locked up. Let's try some real ugga-dugga power here. There we go. Now, normally, I'd be a lot more careful about taking this stuff apart. I can't imagine anybody wants pistons for a 928. I will protect them and try to get them out and matched back up with their appropriate bearing caps. So I'm using a brass drift on that to protect the threads. And then we will just, here's one of the bearings. We'll save that as a surprise for a few minutes from now. I'll also leave it on there in case I knock something into the crank. So I've got to get in here and get this get these pistons out. There we go. There is one piston right there. We'll at the very minimum match up the pistons and the rod bearing caps so that they are all pointing the way that they are supposed to be, in case some poor soul needs a 4.5 piston. I'm no engine builder, I'm no pro at this stuff, but this bearing, there you can see, I'm trying to get it to snap back into its groove. There we go. So you can see here, as I peel it back out of the rod, yeah, there's definitely some damage to the bearing surface here. This is probably the one that got loose and was knocking and was making all of the bad noises. So you can see there, try to get the lighting right for it. Yeah, that would say to me that's where the problem was. No, it didn't get bad to the point where it probably couldn't have been rebuilt. So maybe there was an oil starvation issue. I don't see any blockages in the pickup tube. Like the pickup tube is basically a giant hole. Let me get this other piston out of here and I'll show you. It does look like there's some heat in the ends of the crank here. I don't know if that's normal. And then you can see right there on the back side of that crank where there was some I don't know what you call it, swarf or metallic deposits that was inside the bearing. So I think this rear main rod journal was where all the unhappiness was focused at. The rest of them don't look that bad. I don't see, I mean, I assume that the material crept through all the bearings and they all would have been satisfactorily unhappy at some point, but I don't know. So I have to continue to tear the engine down further and undo a lot of bolts to get the crank out. But getting the crank out will probably save a considerable amount of weight on the engine itself. Like I said, no one wants a 600-pound coffee table, so that's why we're doing it this way. All right, so here we have the cradle with the main bearings, and the main bearings don't look terrible. They don't look great. Well, there we go. There's another one that kind of looks terrible. You can see it's got some wear on the back side of it there. That one is the matching one for it. So not unrebuildable, just not going to be rebuilt. Now I have a mess that I have to clean up, but I've got the engine stripped down and figured out what most likely caused the problem, and now have a plan of attack. If any of you 928 guys want that oil pan and pickup tube, let me know. I will sell it to you and I will ship it to you. So it's a good oil pan. It's in good shape, doesn't leak, any of that kind of stuff. So if you need a pan, there you go. Probably like 150 bucks. Seems to be about what they sell for. But I think I'm going to lop this video off right here. So the teardown on the Porsche 928 coffee table is complete. There's still a lot to do to get it prepped for assembly and get it up for sale. But I got the hardest part of it done and got it all torn down. That's all from Throttle Grotto. Until next time, get out there and work on something.